At 70 degrees below zero, the world does not forgive mistakes. The air turns sharp like broken glass. Each breath burns your lungs. Trees stand frozen and silent, their branches heavy with frost. In that kind of cold, even machines refuse to move. Metal cracks, fuel thickens, and survival becomes a test of will. But on one brutal winter morning, in a remote Arctic village, an 80-year-old grandmother proved that courage does not age. Her name was Marta. Marta had lived in the north her entire life. She understood winter not as an enemy, but as a force that demanded respect. Every morning, no matter how cold it was, she would step outside her small wooden home to check her firewood and make sure nothing had frozen beyond repair. That morning, the temperature had dropped to minus 70 degrees Celsius. The sky was pale blue, almost white. Snow didn't fall. It hung in the air like frozen dust. The kind of cold where exposed skin freezes in seconds. As Marta stepped carefully through the snow, she noticed something unusual near the edge of her property. A shape, still, half buried in frost. At first, she thought it was a fallen branch. But then she saw it. Antlers. A young reindeer lay motionless in the snow, its fur coated in ice crystals. Its legs were stiff. Frost clung to its eyelashes. It wasn't dead, but it was close. In temperatures like that, an animal can freeze in less than an hour if it's weak or injured. Marta didn't hesitate. At 80 years old, her body wasn't fast and it wasn't strong, but her mind was sharp. She knew one thing. If she left the reindeer there, it would not survive another 30 minutes. She hurried back inside her cabin. Inside, her wood stove glowed red hot. The air was warm, filled with the scent of burning pine. She grabbed thick wool blankets, an old sled, and a thermos of warm water. She wrapped a scarf around her face and went back out. Dragging a sled through snow in minus 70 degrees is not easy. Every step felt heavy. The cold pressed against her chest. Her fingers ached even inside thick gloves. When she reached the reindeer, she knelt beside it. Its breathing was shallow. She spoke softly to it, not because she expected it to understand, but because calmness matters. Even animals sense fear. Carefully, she rolled the frozen animal onto the sled. It was heavier than she expected. Her back protested. Her arms trembled, but she did not stop. Slowly, step by step, she dragged the reindeer toward her cabin. The journey back felt longer than it should have been. The cold tried to steal her strength. Frost formed on her eyelashes. Her boots crunched against snow that sounded like breaking glass. Finally, she reached her door. Inside the cabin, warmth wrapped around them both. She closed the door quickly to keep the heat in. Then she began the delicate process of saving a life. You cannot warm a frozen animal too quickly. Rapid heat can shock the body. Marta knew this from decades of experience with harsh winters. She placed the reindeer near the stove, but not too close. She removed chunks of ice gently from its fur. She wrapped it in thick wool blankets. She dipped a cloth into warm, not hot, water and slowly pressed it against the animal's legs to restore circulation. Minutes passed, then an hour. The cabin was silent except for the crackling fire. At first, nothing happened. Then, a small movement. One ear twitched. Marta leaned closer. The reindeer's chest rose deeper this time. Its breathing strengthened. Slowly, warmth began to return to its body. She whispered encouragement as if speaking to a child. Another hour passed before the reindeer tried to lift its head. It collapsed at first. Too weak, but it was alive. Through the long Arctic day, Marta stayed by its side. She fed it small amounts of warm water. She kept adjusting the blankets. She watched for signs of frostbite. By evening, the reindeer was able to sit upright. Its dark eyes blinked slowly, adjusting to the light of the cabin. Outside, the temperature remained deadly. The world beyond the wooden walls was still frozen and unforgiving. But inside, life had returned. The reindeer stayed in Marta's cabin for 2 days. She slept lightly, waking often to check on it. At 80 years old, rest mattered, but compassion mattered more. By the third morning, the animal stood on shaky legs. Stronger, warmer, alive. Marta opened the door carefully. Cold air rushed in like a warning. The reindeer hesitated at the threshold. For a moment, it looked back at her, not as a wild creature afraid of humans, but as something aware. Then it stepped into the snow. It moved slowly at first. Then, with growing confidence, it trotted toward the tree line. Within seconds, it disappeared into the white horizon. Marta stood quietly in the doorway. No cameras, no applause, no headlines. Just an 80-year-old woman in the Arctic who refused to let life fade in the snow. In a world that often measures strength by youth and speed, she showed something different. Real strength is endurance. Real courage is quiet. And sometimes, the greatest survival story is not about fighting nature, but choosing compassion in the coldest place on Earth. If this story inspired you, remember, kindness is powerful, even at -70 degrees. And sometimes, the warmest hearts survive the coldest winters.